So I got a new roommate recently. My old roomie decided to get more serious with his girlfriend of 3 years, and after months, probably years even, she finally backed him into the proverbial corner. Ultimatums were given, and under threat of breakup, he finally decided completely freely of his own will to put a ring on it. I was happy for them. They had their ups and downs like any couple, but I truly think they were good for each other. Despite how good they were for each other, however, this wasn't good for me, as now I had to find a new roommate to split the bills with. I was happy for them, sure, but I dreaded the process ahead. Jake, my old roommate, and I had known each other since grade school, and despite having our hiccups from time to time living together, we got on exceptionally well. Finding another person to cohabitate with that would be as awesome as Jake would be a daunting task, nigh impossible. We grew up in the same small town together, and after high school we both decided to head off to the big city and leave our one-horse town in the dust. It was tough at first. The culture shock alone was enough to lose sleep over, but after a while we settled into our new city boy lifestyle and never looked back. The toughest part for me, at least at first, was not knowing anybody. 3 years later, and I'm still kinda working on that aspect. I'm not the sociable person in our duo. That would be Jake. For every acquaintance or amicable coworker that I had, Jake had 5 actual friends, it seemed. Back when we were kids, I was the shy introvert, and Jake was the outgoing extrovert who adopted me. It's been him and me against the world ever since, until a couple of months ago, that is. Rent was coming up, and despite all of my attempts to find a new roomie, it was all for naught. I got desperate, really desperate. In my desperation, I may have done something bold, if not outright stupid. I posted an ad on a certain website. I won't name it here, but let's just say the page has a reputation for things of ill repute happening there, despite the website's good intention. Do you follow? No, Craigslist. I posted an ad on Craigslist. I know, right? Like I said, though, I was desperate. I couldn't very well borrow any more money from my dad, not again. I guess I was hoping to be swarmed with replies and offers, and to have a decent pool of potential people to vet and choose from. Nope, no such luck. I only got one reply. One measly reply. The oddest, most quirky little guy I ever met, too. I wouldn't exactly categorize myself as normal, but next to this guy, I might as well be John Everyman. I figured, what the hell, though? I was growing more and more desperate every day as the rent was coming up due soon. It seemed like I was stuck with the little guy now. He's about 4 foot 10 inches. That's about 147 chem for everybody rocking the metric system and 110 elb soaking wet, or somewhere close to 50 key. His name is Ian, and he's a small, bitter little man. Despite his stature, he wasn't afraid to get in my face and confront me about any and every little thing. Within his first week living here, he'd already accused me of theft, spying on him, using too much hot water, having the volume on my TV up too loud, and about a dozen other petty little things. I am no thief, and I could give a crap less about trying to sneak around to see what he's up to. The guy's personality is like sandpaper and not the fine grit stuff either. I'm talking coarse and abrasive. He was a cop by profession, so I guess I just chalked it up to a trait of the job. Within the first couple of weeks, I thought I had a pretty good read on him, but just about all of my assumptions seemed to be wrong. With him being such a small, rude little man, one would assume that he wasn't too popular with the fairer sex. Wrong. He brought very good-looking ladies home all the time. I'm talking 8s and 9s, I dare say even perfect 10s. It's always different women, too. I've never seen the same girl twice. I thought maybe they could have been escorts. Maybe ladies of ill repute, but I'm not so sure. I knew one of them from a restaurant up the street where she worked as a waitress, and she just didn't seem the type to sell herself like that. He was living there for going on 2 months, and now we almost arrived to where we are currently. A few nights ago, he brought another lady home, and early the next day, I heard this odd scratching noise coming from his bedroom. I knew it wasn't Ian. I had been home all that day, and I distinctly remember him being rude and telling me to stop touching the damn thermostat on his way out of the door for work that morning. I thought maybe it was the woman he had brought home. I never remembered seeing her leave. I never see any of them leave. I guess I assumed they always jetted out in the middle of the night or early the next morning. When the scratching persisted for several hours, I decided to investigate. If we had some kind of rodent problem, then I needed to find out and tell the landlord ASAP. I put my ear to his door and heard something. I didn't know what it was. It was like this weird, stretchy noise, like cords of rope twisting and stretching under tension, and it was accompanied by ever so faint groans. There's a big rule in the house, and that rule is to never go snooping. Ian vehemently reinforced this rule by telling me multiple times that if he ever caught me going through his stuff, it'd be the last stupid thing I ever did. While that may sound like some sort of veiled threat, I hadn't taken it as one, not directly. Ian, being Ian, was saying rude, mean shit like that all the time. Thinking that we may have a pest problem, I decided to break this rule. I jimmied the door open with a screwdriver, and what I was face to face with made my blood turn cold. I popped the door open and was faced with an unfurnished bedroom. No bed, no shelves, no drawers, not a stick of furniture. I reached over for the light switch, but it seemed to be covered with duct tape, leaving it stuck in the off position. Upon opening the door to the room, the scratching and groaning had ceased, and I was immediately hit in the face by a wave of heat and humidity. I stood there several moments, my ears perked up to try and narrow down the noise. There was nothing, absolute silence. When I stepped into the room, I noticed a faint, sickly sweet smell, as well as a clear, sticky substance pooled on the floor. I walked a little further in, avoiding the goop and hoping to hear whatever the hell it was that had brought me in here in the first place, and that's when I finally heard it again. It came from above me, and when I looked up, I was faced with something truly horrible. On the ceiling of the bedroom were dozens of silky-looking pods, the oldest of which had the dried husks of women barely visible from within them. They looked like dry, rotten mummies, the freshest of which contained several bodies, still writhing from within. The one that seemed to be the most active contained the lady I had seen him bring home last night, her face gaunt and her eyes blackened and sunken in. She still looked to be alive, though I don't know how. Her eyes found me and pleaded in a look of stark terror, though I still don't know whether she wanted me to free her or give her death. When she opened her mouth, I nearly pissed myself. Inside were a score of eyes, little pebbles glinting in the light, and from within slowly emerged several long, spindly spider legs, slowly emerging and spreading out and onto her sunken cheeks. I booked it. I ran out of that apartment so damn fast I left ALL of my things behind. Ian can have them. I'm NOT going back. I'm currently squatting on Jake's couch, much to his fiancée's chagrin. He thinks I'm crazy, having told him my story, and he strongly urged me not to breathe a word of that craps to his fiancée if I wanted to keep staying here. I'm already getting the feeling like she doesn't much care for me, and that I'm quickly overstaying my welcome. To mention to her my crazy story would probably only hasten the process. I don't know what to do. Ian was a cop, so I can't call the police. What if they are all spider folk too? I'm posting this here in hopes that one of you can give me some advice, maybe put me in contact with a monster hunter or even a pest control company that deals in large spiders. Like, really large. I've looked just about everywhere. Everywhere but Craigslist. I think my roommate is trying to kill me. It's no secret that my roommate and I don't like each other. I found her a few months ago after my other roommate dropped out of school. I didn't vet her much because I needed to find someone fast to cover half the rent. Of course, I did a background check, stalked her social media, that kind of thing. But I'd only actually talked to her one for 20 minutes before she moved in. She's mid-20s, like me, and very pretty. Perfect blonde hair and clear blue eyes. Perfectly applied makeup from pink eyeshadow to skin that looked like it had been airbrushed on. Sparkly white teeth with a killer smile. I think that's why I didn't spend more time vetting her. I assumed she must be okay because she looks okay. I immediately regretted my decision. Apparently, Emily is a beauty vlogger. She doesn't have a real job, just sits in her room all day, trying out different makeup looks for her fans. I hear her up at all hours of the night, even talking and giggling as she records. But at least she pays her rent. So I didn't grumble as I cleaned up the foundation powder from our counter. Seriously, what does this woman's skin really look like? She applies like a metric ton of foundation to her face every day. I didn't complain when she woke me up at 2 a.m. with a fit of high-pitched giggles, or when I had to leave the windows open in freezing cold just to get rid of that horrible floral scent. She tried to befriend me at first, but after I sniped at her a few times, she got the message. We pleasantly ignored each other as if an unspoken pact had been made. Things were actually fine. That all changed on September 7th. I was running late. I didn't let the shower water run for a few minutes like I usually do. I jumped right in, and as soon as my feet hit the ceramic, they slipped out from under me. If I hadn't grabbed the curtain rod just in time, I would have cracked my head open. "I'm so sorry. I'm trying out this new conditioner," Emily explained when I told her. "It's super detangling. I never really noticed, but I guess the bathtub does get kind of slippery. I'm so sorry." She was being really nice about it, but I was furious. It was bad enough that she messed up the place with all her beauty gook. Now it was a safety hazard too. "I can't keep doing this," I said, trying to keep my voice from rising. "You have to keep all your makeup in your bedroom. I'm sick of cleaning up all your messes. And you can't use weird shit in the shower that might kill me." "Okay," she said in a small voice. Emily was really good about keeping her stuff out of the bathroom after that. The bathtub was never slippery, and I even noticed that cloying floral scent seemed to fade. I was happy, and even felt a little bad for yelling at her so much. She pays half the rent, just like I do. Why do I get to say what comes into the bathroom and what doesn't? But then it got worse. On September 30th, I woke up early, made my way to the fridge, and shamelessly grabbed the milk to take a swig right out of the carton. Emily drinks fat-free, so the two is all mine. But as soon as the milk hit my tongue, I began to sputter. What is this?" The milk didn't taste just sour. It was acrid, burning my tongue and making my eyes tear. I ran over to the sink and spit it out. It had a strange consistency, like it had been diluted with something clear and slightly viscous. Like spit or something. Emily burst out of her bedroom. "What happened? Something is really wrong with this milk. Oh my God, you drank the milk." A funny feeling settled in my stomach. Why? Why would I not drink the milk? I told you last night. I asked you if I could use your milk carton for a beauty mask recipe. You said sure, so I poured the remaining milk into a cup. She pointed to an aluminum foil-covered mug in the fridge and used the carton for the mask. I cupped my hands under the faucet, swished water in my mouth, over and over until the acrid taste started to fade. She kept apologizing, but I could barely hear her voice over the faucet. That night I couldn't sleep. I don't remember her asking me about the milk carton. That thought pulsed in my brain well into the wee hours. I got up, turned the lock, and jimmied a chair underneath the doorknob for good measure. And why my milk carton? She could have used a bowl, a bottle, a Ziploc bag, and I don't know what the hell she put in her beauty mask, but it sure tasted like poison. I kept even more distance from Emily for the next few days, trying to figure out what to do. Kicking her out would most likely result in me having to move, too, unless I could find someone else to take her place within a matter of days. And I'm probably just being paranoid. She was a beauty vlogger, and making some weird ass face mask sounds just like the kind of thing that would go viral. That's what I told myself, until Friday happened. I got home late that night, a little drunk. I unlocked the door, yawning, and stepped inside. Then I flicked the light switch. It didn't go on. Damn it. The bulb must have blown. The light was on in the main hallway, so it couldn't be a power outage. Still, the apartment was pitch dark. I fumbled through the darkness, my footsteps weaving from the alcohol, my hands stretched out in front of me. They met something soft. What is that? What is that? I was standing in the middle of the main room. There was only the couch and TV in there. It should have been a clear shot to my bedroom door. I squinted into the darkness. Nothing, but it was weird. I could tell something was there. By the way the hum of the fridge muffled right in front of me. How the slight variations in black and gray changed just 2 feet in front of my face. This is stupid. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and hit the flashlight. My heart dropped. Emily stood right in front of me, just standing there in the middle of the room. At almost 2 a.m., She faced away from me towards the windows. Her blonde hair cascaded down her back, glinting off the phone's flashlight. "Hey, Emily," I backed away. "What are you doing up so late?" She slowly turned around. She was grinning.
A wide ear-to-ear grin. Her blue eyes sparkled in the light as she stared at me.
And then she giggled, a low giggle in her throat, as if she were positively delighted that I'd just arrived home. It made her entire body shake, and that's when I noticed something glinting in her hand. A knife, a knife. I forced my legs to move, forced myself to run towards the apartment door, but as soon as I took a step, I heard her lunge after me. Her fingers grabbed my hair, tug, and then I jerked forward with all my strength, ripping several out in the process. I made it to the door and burst into the hallway. Ran down the stairs, screaming the entire time. Someone must have dialed 911 because minutes after I made it to the parking lot, red and blue lights were throbbing in the darkness, sirens wailing in my ears. The police found Emily in the apartment. They arrested her and told me later that Emily Ryan was a fake name, though they haven't been able to identify her yet. However, she did admit one thing that chilled me to the bone. Emily never had a beauty vlog. My roommate wants me dead. Her name was Cynthia, and we met because of work. I took a job halfway across the country, and my supervisor hooked me up with another recent hire who was looking to move closer to work. We talked on the phone a couple times, did some video chats, and everything seemed fine. Plus, I didn't have a lot of options as the city was too expensive for me to pay for my own place. She was also from the area, so she could scout out the rentals and talk to the landlords in person, which made it easy. Eventually, we found a place we were both happy with, and I took the plunge, paying the deposit and driving for almost 10 hours. This was back in midwinter, and when I finally got to see the place in person, the snowbanks outside were as tall as I was. It was the first time I ever had to shovel out a parking spot. Cynthia wasn't actually moving in for like a week, so I had the place to myself in the meantime, but she'd already been there to move some of her stuff in. Most of it was confined to her room, but she'd moved a couch into the living room, which was convenient because I didn't bring any furniture with me. I was planning on sleeping on the floor the first few nights and going to IKEA or something later. As it was, I just ended up sleeping on the couch. That first night, I unloaded all my toiletries onto the kitchen counter, the only surface in the house, and ordered in some food. I was planning to read a little before I went to sleep, but there was no coffee table near the couch, and I didn't want to leave my glasses on the floor. Plus, I was tired, so I passed out almost immediately. That was when the first thing happened, and it was barely anything. That night I had awful dreams. At some point in the early morning, the sound of the water turning on upstairs woke me. It was a soft, bubbly sound, not enough to be startling, just enough to make me open my eyes. I would have fallen back to sleep if I hadn't seen something moving. At first I thought it was a trick of the light filtering through the blinds onto my skin, but once I was fully awake and I could feel them, there were hundreds of little beetles crawling over my skin. I screamed, tripping on myself as I leapt off the couch. I scraped them off my skin as I staggered into the shower, blasting the water. I was probably in there for half an hour, sitting in the tub and shaking. There was a rash on my legs. It was splotchy, and when I Googled it, it didn't look like any traditional pest bites, bed bugs, ticks, scabies. I called my future roommate and told her what had happened with the couch. She acted horrified, saying she couldn't believe it, that her friends had given her the couch after it had been sitting in their garage for a while. She said she didn't see anything on it when she was moving it in. I told her I was going to put it by the road, but that I'd replace it myself when I got around to going to IKEA. She had the nerve to act put out by that, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to risk the bugs getting into anything else in the house. Luckily, it was pretty easy to disassemble and put into large contractor bags, which I left by the road for trash pickup. The very next day, she showed up completely out of the blue. It was a tense first meeting. She apologized for the couch, but she was obviously pissed about it. I spent the day assembling IKEA furniture in my room while she hung around on her phone. In the afternoon, I asked if she could help me assemble the new couch I bought, and we got to talking a little. Very quickly, the conversation was steered back to the old couch. She said she looked through the bags trying to find one of the bugs to show her friends so they could keep an eye out, but couldn't find anything. It was clear she was being passive-aggressive, accusing me of lying. The bags had been taken away earlier in the day, so there was no way of proving myself.
Eventually, she let it go, and we tried to move on.
We rarely ever talked. The back door of the apartment was near my room, and the front door was near hers, so we could both come and go without ever running into each other. But that didn't stop me from knowing that she was a slob. Her hair was always everywhere. Her dishes sat in the sink for days. Her laundry hamper sat in the bathroom until it was practically overflowing. Plus, I couldn't stand her. Her voice was like nails on a chalkboard, so I avoided it whenever possible. The job started, but thankfully we didn't work in the same department. So, if anything, we saw even less of each other. Our only conflict consisted of who got home first and took the closer parking spot. One of our reserved spots was right in front of the house. The other one was probably 100 yards away. We swapped pretty evenly at first, with our schedules being pretty balanced. But one week, about a month into the job, I was put on a project that tended to wrap up pretty early, leading to me beating her home consistently. She did not like that. She started slamming the door every day when she got home. On Wednesday, she actually walked into the kitchen while I was cooking to tell me a whole story about how she'd slipped walking from the far spot. "Make sure you're careful," she said. I didn't even think about it, at least not until the next morning. I was walking out to my car, like always, but this time, when I stepped up to my door, the ground was slick as oil. My feet slipped right out from under me and I fell hard, knocking my head on the asphalt so hard it bled. When I finally recovered enough to get up, I inspected the area where I had fallen and looked all around my car, and I swear the only place with ice was right in front of my door. It didn't make any sense. There was no method for water to accumulate there. That's when I remembered what she had said to me the night before, "Be careful." I have no doubt in my mind she did it, poured some water in front of my door to make me slip. I didn't say anything to her about it, of course. I couldn't let her know I was on to her, but from then on, you can bet I was careful. After that, things went downhill fast. It started with my toothpaste. The apartment had one bathroom, and it was the only place in the house where our stuff wasn't obviously divided, where she could have unfettered access behind a locked door. I'm not someone prone to toothaches. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I can remember having one, so when I started getting them daily, I knew something was wrong. My teeth were also getting yellow, so I started paying more attention when brushing. I think that's how I started noticing that sometimes my toothpaste wasn't in the same place I had left it. I can only explain this next part by saying I had started using a new brand of toothpaste, so I wasn't intimately familiar with the flavor. Additionally, I don't paint my nails very often. My hands shake, so it's difficult for me to do it, but I had a pretty important presentation coming up, and I wanted to give myself a little burst of confidence, so I opened up a fresh bottle of pink nail polish. Almost immediately, my hand slipped, and I needed to pour some nail polish remover on a cotton ball and try to dab it off of the side of my finger. Immediately, the remover smelled familiar, and I tried to place it while I worked on my nails. It wasn't until the next morning that it clicked when I went to brush my teeth. The nail polish remover smelled like my toothpaste. Someone had put acetone in my toothpaste. I rinsed my mouth until it burned, scrubbing it with a washcloth in case the acetone was embedded in my toothbrush. That's when I knew for sure she was crazy, but it just kept getting worse. I found sharp rocks in front of my tires. My food began tasting different after I left it in the fridge for a while. I started getting sick the first time, could have been a fluke, but the second. I'm writing this having just recovered from being violently ill. My whole body was shaking from dehydration. She is slipping something in my food. Things didn't really come to a head until yesterday. She came home late, through the front door while I sat on the living room couch. The lights were off, and she didn't know I was there. I watched as she tried to slip a bag of something into her room. "What's in there?" I confronted her. She turned, and I saw the whites of her eyes, her face the perfect picture of innocent shock. She said, still holding the bag. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "What's in the bag?" I asked again. I was trying to stay reasonable. Nothing," she said. "You're kind of freaking me out right now." I laughed. It was funny. "Okay," she said, obviously on edge. She wasn't expecting me to confront her. Is something wrong? "I don't know, is there?" I pressed. "Why don't you show me what's in the bag?" "Why should I?" she deflected. "Isn't any of your business." "My business," I demanded. "It became my business when you started threatening my safety." "What are you even talking about?" she said, sounding irritated, almost as if she was exhausted by the conversation. "The ice, Cynthia," I said. "The food, the acetone in my toothpaste." I continued to list it all out, her eyebrows raised and lowered cartoonishly, her mouth stretching into a sinister frown. "Holy shit," she said. "You're crazy, and I'm leaving." She made for the door. I got up, crossing the room in only a few strides and coming between her and her escape. "Not until I see what's in that bag," I said, my voice calm. "Bitch," she said threateningly. "You need to get out of my way." I lunged, trying to snatch the bag from her hands. She reared back before dropping the bag and charging me. I've been in fights before, but she was taller than me by quite a few inches, so I had to fight dirty. She was grabbing for the door handle. I tried to stop her, but her knee came up right into my stomach, and I staggered back. The door was coming open when I saw the shovel. Before I even knew what I was doing, it was in my hands. I swung it against her back, and she went down with a shriek, but she wasn't out. She growled at me, grabbing onto the shovel and trying to yank it from my hands. I had leverage, but she had strength, and I felt it slipping. Once she got the shovel, it would be over for me. You have to be able to see that. She was taller and stronger, and she would have been armed with a deadly weapon. I already knew she wanted me dead. What I did next was life or death. When the shovel finally slipped from my grasp, her own momentum brought her down, and for a split second, her head was positioned between the door and its jamb. I swung it, hard. It cracked against her skull. Once, twice, I just kept swinging until it was over, until she stopped twitching. I checked outside, but no one was on the street, though our neighbors must have heard the noise. I don't know why they didn't come out during the fight, at least then I would have had witnesses. As it was, there was no proof that I hadn't just randomly murdered this woman. I dragged her inside and shut the door. The only place I could think to bring her was the tub, so I dragged her heavy body towards the bathroom. I only made it a few steps when I saw the bag laying on its side, the handle ripped off. On closer inspection, it was from a pharmacy. I looked inside and found exactly what I was looking for. Not only did she have a prescription for psychiatric medication, she had 2 huge bottles of contact solution, something she must have been using to poison my food. On top of that, as if I needed any more evidence, there was a bottle of nail polish remover, 100 me pure acetone. She's still in the tub now, and it's just after midnight. I'm going to call the police. I guess I just wanted to get it all down and set the record straight before I did. I don't want the police to think I'm some kind of lunatic when I try to explain it to them. Let me know if you have any advice. This situation was just so traumatic that I don't know if I'm thinking straight. If you take anything away from this, just be careful about your roommates. You never know who you're going to get. There's some real crazy people out there. What's even crazier is I just looked at Cynthia's body slumped over in the tub, and those bugs are crawling all over it. My roommate invited me to her family's Thanksgiving dinner. I almost didn't make it out alive. My roommate Paulette had become my best friend over the few months that we've shared our college dorm. She had helped me to come out of my shell a bit, inviting me to any get-together she went to, and even forcing me to some if I was hard-headed about getting out for some fresh air. She had made me feel welcome and wanted, honestly, which is something I didn't experience growing up as an orphan who hopped from foster home to foster home. I had never had any biological family reach out to me or made any connections with the families I had briefly lived with, so feeling welcome was something I had always craved. I wasn't shocked whenever she invited me to her family's Thanksgiving dinner. She had been telling her family about me for a while, even having phone calls where she would put it on speaker and have them talk to me, something I was always pretty awkward with. They did really sound like nice people, though, and I knew if I stayed at the dorm, I would just be sad thinking about everyone else getting to spend time with their families. I thought it would be a nice distraction, even though I knew I'd probably spend the whole time making awkward small talk. So Paulette and I piled up into her Toyota Camry and headed out towards her house. They lived about an hour away in a tiny little town that had barely anything, most of it adorned by back roads full of pine trees. It was on one of these back roads where Paulette's family had their two-story farmhouse, which had a very cozy and homey feel to it. Although it was 2 stories, it felt cozy instead of roomy due to how much stuff was piled into it. It kind of reminded me of the Weasley house from Harry Potter, except appearing more stable and less likely to topple over. Vintage furniture mostly filled the house, but it also had a healthy mixture of newer items. The newer items, mostly electronics. My favorite part of it was the huge flat-screen TV that sat above the beautiful, ornate fireplace, seeming so out of place. Little swirls stood out on the fireplace to resemble little puffs of smoke floating up, standing out on the brick and somehow looking delicate even though they were made of stone. A bookshelf with books stuffed into every open inch sat beside the fireplace, looking like it was a couple of books away from toppling over. A very comfy and worn-down-looking couch, paired with 2 matching chairs, sat in front of the fireplace, waiting for the visitors. We were the first 2 to sit down, and we were quickly surrounded by Paulette's other family members that gradually showed up to the occasion. Soon, the sitting area felt just as packed as the bookshelf, and I felt very awkward and claustrophobic. "What is your name, sweetie?" an older woman asked me. I looked over in the direction of her voice and almost jumped a foot out of my chair due to her strange appearance. Her wildly curly hair fought against the bobby pin she had holding it in, a strong smell of hair spray coming from it. Her pointy glasses reminded me of Roz from Monsters, Inc., although she had a rather sweet-sounding voice compared to that character. Her lipstick was the brightest shade of red he had ever seen, and it stained the filter of the cigarette she had in her hand. Seeing how uncomfortable I was, Paulette reached over from her perch next to me and patted the woman's upper arm. "Aunt Jolene, this is my roommate Piper," she introduced. The woman nodded as she took a drag from her cigarette, making that weird, scrunched-up expression with her face that all smokers do to not release smoke into someone's face. "Honey, you are so tiny," she said. "You need to put some meat on your bones." "Don't worry," said Paulette. "I'm going to be making her plate for her." They both chuckled at this comment before switching to discussing some distant relative they hadn't seen in forever. I kind of zoned out as they talked, trying to cover my nose from the smoke without being obvious and seeming rude. Thankfully, it wasn't long before Paulette's mom called us all into the dining room. I had never been happier to get off of a couch. I thought the living room was adorable, but it was nothing compared to how phenomenal the dining room looked. The furniture in here was strictly vintage, mostly looking Victorian and intricate in its designs. The table itself took up the entirety of the room, spanning from one end to the other. Its legs and edges looked hand-carved, with the legs specifically being made to look like a waterfall of roses was drizzling from it. The chairs matched that design, along with the fireplace at the opposite end of the room. A beautiful crystal chandelier sat above the table with crystals hanging down and twinkling as sunlight beams bounced off of them through the window. Not only was the room beautiful, but the spread of food was just as amazing and smelled absolutely delicious. Dressing, chicken, and dumplings, a huge ham, and a huge ham, and a huge turkey were some of the dishes on the table, but they were far from it. A small table beside the fireplace overflowed with desserts as well. Plates, cups, and silverware waited before each chair, a huge glass of lemonade waiting to fill those cups. This room was truly something I had never seen besides similar ones that I had seen in movies. "Well, dig in, guys," announced Paulette's mom, and everyone quickly picked a chair. My mouth was already watering, and by the time Paulette's dad began cutting into the turkey, I felt like I was practically drooling. Excited chatter surrounded the table as everyone began filling their plates, and Paulette grabbed mine to begin filling it just as she said she would. One of Paulette's brothers, Jared, got up from the table and placed a record on a record player I hadn't noticed beside the dessert table. It crackled a bit as it spun around, but soon a mixture of instruments began to play, like a piano, clarinet, and violin. Soon, a voice began to sound from the speakers as well. "Oh, you're my honey. Oh, you're my baby. Oh, you're my sweet P-I-I-E."
"My, don't you see, my little sweet treat, what you're doing to me?"
The lyrics were quite strange. I found myself distracted from my food as I continued to listen to the lyrics, staring at the record as it spun round and round. Uncle Edgar used to think he could make it as a singer. said Paulette's dad as he noticed me staring, but I think his sense of humor was just too strained. I didn't really know what he meant by that, and no one decided to explain, so I left the conversation at that and turned back to my plate. "Wait, where is the special dish?" asked a young boy who I recognized from Paulette's family picture book as her little cousin Richard. I glanced around the table, finally taking the time to get a good look at everyone that I hadn't talked to yet. There were only a few people from the picture book that I didn't see. The missing family members were quickly wiped from my mind as Paulette's mom appeared from the kitchen, holding another huge dish, this one containing a piece of meat that I didn't recognize. It took up the entire pan and seemed hard for her to carry. Everyone quickly scrambled to move the dishes already taking up the table so that she could set the heavy load down. "What is that?" I whispered to Paulette. "Oh, she started. "Pig, I think." She shrugged, turning back to the conversation I had taken her from. Her response was weird to me, but I thought it was probably just my nerves about the whole day getting to me. I looked back at the dish as her mom sliced into the meat, cutting thin strips off. Blood and other juices flowed from the cuts, filling up the bottom of the pan. I have never been squeamish of blood. In fact, I've always loved my steaks a bit bloody, but my nerves were still making me feel weird. Is that how pig was supposed to be prepared? I began to feel bile come up my throat as the blood continued to pour. I tried to distract myself by eating again, but I couldn't ignore the feeling of goosebumps on my arm. I glanced around the table and saw everyone else was perfectly fine, eating away or conversing with each other. Why was I the only one freaking out over a pig? You know, that feeling like an answer to something is on the tip of your tongue, but you can't figure out what it is that your brain is wanting you to say. It's like the memory is scratching at your brain, trying to break free, but you don't know why you can't think of it. That was how I felt right now, and it made a mixture with the feelings of anxiety. The mixture overwhelmed me. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths to try and calm myself. It is okay, I thought to myself. There is nothing wrong right now. You're surrounded by nice people and have a delicious meal to finish in front of you. I slowly opened my eyes, thinking I had things under control now until I realized my plate seemed a lot farther away than it should be. And then I remembered what my brain wanted to, the word on the tip of my tongue. "Oh, no," I said out loud without meaning to. "Long pig." I heard Paulette ask what was wrong, but I was unable to respond. Everything seemed to fade out of existence besides me and the strange meat. I heard voices asking me if I was okay over and over, but I couldn't focus on them. The only sounds that were able to break free of the walls I suddenly had around me were the lyrics still playing from the record player. "You look so scrumptious, oh so delicious, my sweetie, sweet pea. Come on over here, oh my precious dear, and give me a little eat. I heard a muffled, "Do you want to go to the bathroom?" come from beside me. I was unable to respond, though, and a moment later I felt arms wrap around me and gently lift me. I was practically carried away out of the room, my feet somehow still able to operate, and I felt like I was floating.
Everything seemed dim. Sunlight there moments before now sucked out.
It felt like a total blur, but I was brought into a tiny bathroom and sat on the closed toilet. We sat there for a few minutes, me on the toilet and the person on the floor, until I finally calmed down enough for the world to come back into focus. I realized it was Paulette sitting on the floor in front of me with her legs crossed, patiently waiting for me to be able to communicate again. "Hey, you okay?" she asked in a soft voice. I nodded, "Thank you." "It's no biggie," she reassured me. "What made it happen anyway?" I thought about my response for a while, debating if I should make something up or not, because strange meat sounded like a silly reason to have a panic attack. Why would they be eating long pig? Would she even know what that was if I told her? It took a while before I decided on telling her the truth. Well, not the long pig part, but the rest of it. "The meat gave me a weird vibe," I replied. "The pig?" she asked. I nodded and she giggled.
Oh, that's okay. I promise it was just pig. Why did it freak you out?
I shrugged. "I don't know. Just a weird vibe." She nodded as well and then stood up from her position on the floor. "Are you okay enough to go back out there now?" "I think I'm just going to sit here for a bit." She nodded once more before exiting, slowly closing the door behind her.
It was a few minutes before I got up from the toilet. I figured I had been in there long enough, so I splashed some water on my face before taking a few deep breaths and exiting the bathroom as well.
Walking down the tiny hallway and out into the living room, I was able to notice even more details I loved about the house. The mishmash of recent and vintage framed photos on the walls, the crazy patterned wallpaper, the random pile of shoes stashed around the front door. It all seemed so homey, something I had never had the privilege to fully experience firsthand. It made me feel safe. Even though I felt safe, old habits die hard, so when I rounded the corner to the other hall, I paused in my tracks, deciding to eavesdrop for a bit on the conversation to see how much I had embarrassed myself. "You didn't tell us the one you were bringing was loony," I heard Aunt Jolene say. That made me frown, shocked that my suspicions had been true. They had all seemed so friendly and inviting. "And she is skinny as all get out," I heard Jared yell. "Shh," Paulette hushed them. "You guys are being way too loud. She was the best thing I could get." That comment confused me. What did she mean by that? Did she not actually like me? Did she not actually like me? Did she view me as a bad friend? "Last year you got us a chubby one, though," whined Richard. "Shut up, Richie," shouted Paulette. "She will taste just fine." "I don't know about that, Polly," said Paulette's dad. "The fatty ones always have more flavor." My eyes grew wide as I realized exactly what they were talking about. Uncle Edgar's weird song started playing in my head like a cruel serenade, mixing with the memory I had over and over. "And why did she say long pig?" asked Paulette's mom, reading my mind. "Did she know what the meat was?" "No," replied Paulette. "She said the meat gave her a weird feeling, but I don't think she knew what it was." "Well, we better get started before she does find out." I don't even know who said that comment. All I know is I sprinted full force to the front door. I didn't bother putting my shoes on because I could already hear them discussing what that sound was from the dining room. I jerked on the door handle to no avail. I did the next best thing, which was to wrap my hand up in the white curtain, decorating the window beside the door, and smashed my fist through the glass until it broke. I got rid of the glass shards the best I could before hopping through, but even if I was cut, there was too much adrenaline pumping through my body to feel any pain. I didn't feel the pain in my lungs as I sprinted in the cold air or the pokey branches on the ground either. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew it had to be somewhere far away from them. It was at that moment that a ray of sunshine seemed to glide through the trees surrounding their front yard, seemingly lighting up an escape route for me. A car was at the end of that route, one of the many parked ones owned by the family members on the edges of the yard. I ran to it, hoping against all hope that one of them had been stupid enough to leave their car unlocked. I tried out 3 cars with no luck. I began panicking as I heard footsteps approaching, but I kept trying cars. I approached Paulette's car and looked into the interior, rushing as I could hear the person getting closer. The moment I heard Paulette scream my name as she approached, it dawned on me. She had a push to start car, and I hadn't seen her take her keys out of her sweater pocket since we got here. I unlocked the car and hopped in the driver's seat in seconds, having the car started and already backing up in only a few more. Paulette chased after me as the car moved, shouting something I couldn't hear. I didn't let it faze me, though, placing all of my focus on getting the hell out of there. I quickly whipped the car around and then zoomed down the long driveway, trying to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. I didn't have enough service to GPS my way out of there, so I had to go off of memory. Paulette's family tried to follow me, but with the number of twists and turns I was making out of confusion, they had trouble staying on my trail. Seeing their cars pop up randomly again and again still frightened me, though, and one time they even tried to ram Paulette's car, but by luck I made it safely back to the town. Their cars quickly disappeared, but I had no idea where. I didn't really care at that point. As long as they weren't still chasing me, I was fine. I quickly found the police station and tried to file a report. I say tried because I noticed the police officers were acting very strange when I explained where the house was. I finally asked what the problem was after they kept whispering and giving each other confused looks. "No one has lived in that house for 4 years," said one of the officers. "That's not true," I replied. "Her whole family does. I just saw them." But it was true. When we went back to the house, they were gone, along with a few of the newer items. The house was never theirs. It was just one they had been lucky enough to find to set up shop in. It was owned by a wealthy family, one they had bought to restore as a possible vacation home, but they never really checked on it because it was so far out in the country that they figured no one could find it. Boy, were they wrong. I later found out that Paulette wasn't her real name, and I assume the same for all the rest of them. The FBI told me they had actually been on the hunt for them for a while, but with the constant name changes and them moving around so frequently, they could never stay on top of it. Paulette and her brother were the bait. They got to know people and became close with them so that they could bring them back home, particularly targeting people like me who had no one else. I guess we would be more likely to be forgotten about, a missing person case swept under the rug. The FBI didn't have a definite number on how many missing person cases were their victims, but with the way they acted when discussing it, it seemed to be a very high number. I was lucky to not be added to that list. When I managed to get back to the dorm, Paulette's room had been cleaned out. The only things she had left were Uncle Edgar's record and a picture of us together that we had taken when we first met, both of which she had placed on my desk. When I flipped the picture over, I saw 2 sentences scribbled on it in Pollock's handwriting. You were right. The meat was human. Thank you for watching our second video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and push the notification icon as we upload more. We plan on bringing you the best horror stories on the internet. And remember, everyone, don't be afraid.